Hey guys, welcome into our third informal weekend. Today we're in the beautiful London. We've got the city behind us, we've got battleships, we've got the Thames, we've got bridges, and we've got, of course, that lovely, beautiful London weather. We're talking about a few things today. The first one is this. The EU is in trade negotiations with Canada. Really important because it seems like this is the first step into the larger sort of transatlantic trade negotiations that they want to enter into. But a really important thing to keep in mind, and just in general when you're thinking about the EU, is this difference between sovereignty, individual member state sovereignty, and the actual coalition of the EU and the EU's power as a political unit. And so this came to a head during these negotiations because 27 of the 28 member states signed off and said, yeah, we want this trade deal with Canada, but one part of one member state, I think it's called Wallonia in Belgium, said, no, we don't want to be part of it. And just because of that one part, it represented just 1% of the entire EU's population, the whole trade deal was sunk. Now, they've since then been able to come back to the drawing board, got together, and they've actually passed it, but that just gives you a little insight into the problems that the EU has. And the reason why 1% of the EU can sink an EU deal is because each individual member state doesn't want to give up its sovereignty on these issues. And so if you were to say, hey, look, actually that 1%, that one part of Belgium, you can't actually overrule this whole trade deal, then each individual member state would be like, well, we don't want to be part of the EU because that's too much sovereignty that you've taken away. And so you'll see this tension between individual state sovereignty and the sort of larger agenda of the EU. So that's something to always think about whenever you see headlines or you're talking about or you're reading about issues or things that the EU is facing, whether it's monetary or fiscal policy, whether it's political, whether it's thinking about the migration. Individual member states want a stake in their sovereignty, but they also want to be a part of the EU. Secondly, Hillary Clinton just got another batch of email revelations, and the FBI has just signaled that they're going to restart or start a new investigation into a different part of her emails. Great news for the Hillary campaign. Just as she thought she was going to walk right into the White House and take it, she's now going to have to face a new round of sort of email scrutiny. And this is just, again and again, people look at Hillary Clinton and they think she is the pinnacle of the corrupt political class, that no one else in the history of US politics would be able to get away with the types of scandals, the type of corruption that surrounds her campaign. But then, of course, all you have to point to if you're a Clinton supporter is, well, there's Donald Trump. And so this is the campaign. It's ridiculous. This is what we've had to walk through. So again, we'll see how much this actually impacts her campaign. I think it'll impact it a little bit, but I don't know if the die has already been cast. We'll have to see. Last, but certainly not least, the BBC just ran an article about Xi Jingping and a plenum. Each year, the Communist Party, the top officials of the Communist Party come together and they have what they call a plenum. It's sort of a meeting where they decide sort of policy directions for the year. And one of the big things that came out of it is that the party wants to coalesce and center around Xi, and they've been saying that in the press. And you thought, well, Xi is the most dominating leader in, communist China since Mao Zedong, but now that they're coming out and saying we're going to actually coalesce around Xi, that's a really, really important sort of signaling factor that they're actually going to be even more power is going to be centered and concentrated in Xi's hands. Probably not the best thing if you're, an average Chinese citizen, but on the other hand, Xi has done a lot to sort of coalesce and drive out corruption in the party base. And so he actually has a lot of clout with most people because of this corruption drive that he's been having in China. So it's something to look out for. More power is harnessed and coalescing around Xi. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for joining us. Remember, reality always trumps ideology.